How a teenage girl stands barefoot in the cold, selling old things from a shoebox, unaware that her life is about to change forever. Get ready, because this story will break your heart and warm it all at once. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring you more stories like this one. It was a grey Thursday afternoon in the quiet town of Larchwood, the kind of place where everyone knows each other, and everyone notices when someone new shows up. The wind carried a chill that hinted winter wasn't far away, and the trees lining Main Street had already lost most of their leaves. But what really caught the eye of a few passers-by wasn't the weather. It was a young girl standing silently near the front of a hardware store, clutching a small cardboard shoebox. She couldn't have been more than 14, maybe 15, wearing a faded hoodie 2 sizes too big and jeans that had seen better years. Her sneakers were torn around the edges and her cheeks were red, not from makeup, but from the cold. She stood with her back against the brick wall, not begging, not speaking, just waiting, as if hoping someone might notice the small handwritten sign that read, "Selling keepsakes. Anything helps." Inside the box were old things, a chipped porcelain figure, a frayed ribbon, a cracked photo frame, and at the very top, a small music box. It was made of wood, scratched and faded, with a tiny ballerina figure that had lost one arm. Still, she placed it carefully on top as if it were worth more than anything else inside. People walked by. Some glanced. Most didn't. A few looked, then looked away, as if seeing her pain made them uncomfortable. The girl didn't call out. She didn't ask for help. She just waited. Her eyes stayed low, scanning the sidewalk, her fingers tucked inside her sleeves to keep warm. Every now and then someone would drop $1 in the box or ask her name. She never gave it. She'd say, "I'm just trying to sell these for food and nothing more." That was enough for some, for others it wasn't. Behind her, the store's neon sign buzzed faintly. Inside, people shopped without noticing her. She'd been standing there for hours. No coat, no lunch, just a quiet determination to earn something, anything, without begging. There was pride in her silence, but also a sadness that felt far too heavy for someone her age to carry alone. At one point, a young mother pushing a stroller paused, looked at the girl, and gently asked, "Sweetheart, do you have a place to go tonight?" The girl nodded, though it wasn't clear if it was true. The woman handed her a sandwich from her bag and left without asking questions. The girl didn't eat it right away. She tucked it in the box carefully, next to the music box, like it was something sacred. And then, just as the sun began to dip behind the buildings and the streetlights flickered on, a black SUV pulled up to the curb. Its windows were tinted, its engine smooth and quiet. The girl barely noticed. Another car, another stranger. But the man who stepped out wasn't just anyone, and he was about to stop for a reason even he didn't yet understand. The engine of the black SUV went quiet, and the door opened slowly. From it stepped a tall man in his 60s, dressed in a sharp grey suit, with polished leather shoes that stood out against the dusty sidewalk. He carried no security, no assistant, just a soft leather briefcase and a look of quiet reflection on his face. His silver hair was neatly combed, and though his clothes screamed money, his expression was calm, maybe even a little tired. People across the street did a double take. Some whispered, others pointed discreetly. "That's Richard Hale," someone murmured. Everyone in town knew the name. He was the billionaire tech investor who'd left Larchwood decades ago, back when he was just a kid from a broken home, trying to make it out. No one expected to see him back, let alone walking down Main Street like any ordinary man. Richard didn't seem to notice the attention. His eyes scanned the street, not looking for business or publicity, but maybe for memories. The diner where he'd washed dishes at 15 was still there. The old theater where he watched dollar movies on Saturdays was now a gym. His expression shifted from distant to focused when he noticed something unexpected. The girl. Her stillness, her silence, and the small forgotten music box perched atop her shoebox. He didn't approach out of pity. It was something else. Maybe the way she stood reminded him of someone he used to be, Maybe it was the way she didn't ask for anything, just waited. Or maybe it was the look in her eyes, that quiet kind of hunger that wasn't just about food. It was about life not giving you much and still showing up anyway. Richard crossed the street slow and deliberate. As he walked, the girl finally looked up. Her face didn't show excitement or fear, just curiosity. People like him didn't usually stop for girls like her. Not in this town, not anywhere. He gave a soft nod, the kind people give when they don't want to startle you. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, his voice low and steady. The girl hesitated. She looked down at the box, then back up at him. Her eyes narrowed for a second, not rudely, just cautious, but she gave a tiny shrug and stepped to the side. "They're just old things," she said quietly. $5 each." Richard didn't smile, but his eyes softened. He knelt down, set his briefcase gently on the sidewalk, and reached for the music box, not knowing it would soon break him in ways he hadn't expected. Richard held the music box in his hands with surprising care. It was old and worn, the kind of thing most people would have walked right past. The paint was chipped, and the tiny ballerina inside had lost part of one arm. Still, something about it made him pause. Maybe it reminded him of something buried in the back of his mind, something from a long time ago. He turned it slowly in his hand, then looked up at the girl. "How much for this?" he asked, his voice soft, almost like he didn't want to scare her. She looked up quickly, almost startled, then back down at the music box as if trying to remember what it even was. Her fingers fidgeted at the edge of her hoodie sleeve. $5, she said, barely above a whisper. Her cheeks flushed like she was afraid it might be too much. But there was no greed in her voice, only hope that someone would say yes. Richard smiled. Not the kind you use when you're amused, but the kind that says you understand. Without saying another word, he reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and pulled out his wallet. The girl didn't expect anything more than a crumpled $5 or a polite refusal. Instead, he carefully took out a single $100 bill and placed it gently in her hand. "Keep the change," he said. The girl froze. For a second, it was like time stopped around her. She looked down at the bill like it might disappear if she blinked. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Her hands trembled just a little as she clutched it. $100 meant food. It meant a few nights of heat, maybe even a warm coat. But she didn't smile. Not yet. She just kept staring at him like she didn't know what to say. "You!" "Sure," she finally whispered. Her voice cracked slightly. She had probably never held that much money at once. Richard gave a small nod. "So you've got more value here than you think," he said, tapping the music box with a finger before placing it inside his briefcase. The girl didn't know what he meant, not yet, but something in her shifted, like maybe she had just been seen for the first time in a long time. Other people watched from across the street, curious but too far to hear. Some thought it was just an old man being generous. Others wondered why he of all people would bother. But Richard didn't care about the whispers. He had what he came for, though he didn't know yet that this simple object would carry a weight he wasn't ready for. As he turned to walk away, the girl called out softly, "Thank you." It was barely more than breath, but he heard it. He looked back for a moment and gave her one last nod before stepping into his SUV. As the door shut behind him, the music box rested beside him on the seat, silent, dusty, and hiding a secret that was about to surface. As Richard settled into the back seat of his black SUV, the music box rested on the seat beside him, forgotten for a moment in the whirlwind of his thoughts. His fingers brushed the dust off the surface as he picked it up again, the small trinket surprisingly light in his hands. Without thinking, he turned the tiny key on the side, curious to hear the sound it would make. At first, there was nothing but the soft click of the mechanism. Then, a gentle tune began to play, slow and haunting. Richard's grip tightened. As the melody filled the car, he recognized it instantly. It was a lullaby, one that had played in the background of his childhood, a song his late sister loved. The sound took him back to a time when things were simpler, when life was full of laughter and family, before everything changed. He could almost picture her sitting in their old home, playing that same tune on an old music box. It was the soundtrack of his childhood, a memory that had long been buried under years of business deals and endless ambition. The melody stirred something deep inside him, something he hadn't felt in years. His eyes closed for a moment, and he let the soft notes wash over him. But as the music played on, something shifted. His chest tightened and his heart began to race. It wasn't just the song that was familiar, it was the feeling it brought. It was the connection to a part of him he had long since ignored, a part that once cared about things beyond wealth and status. The song seemed to unlock a floodgate of memories of his sister, his family, and the time before his life had been consumed by his empire. But what really stopped him cold was when he noticed something odd. The tune wasn't perfect. There was a slight imperfection in the way the notes played, a glitch in the rhythm that mirrored the way his sister's hands had trembled when she was young. The tune, though faint and distant, felt like a ghost, a reminder of her struggles with illness and the painful days they'd spent together. For a moment, Richard's mind reeled. Could it be? No. It was just a song, a coincidence, surely. But as the final notes played, Richard's fingers froze on the music box. He stared at it, trying to make sense of the overwhelming sense of déjà vu, the familiar emotion that rushed over him. This couldn't just be a random trinket, could it? The girl had sold it to him as if it was nothing more than a piece of junk, yet it carried with it a story he was about to unravel. The lump in his throat was hard to swallow. Was this some kind of sign? His mind raced, and yet he felt strangely compelled to know more. His heart pounded louder than the music box. He reached down and wound it again, listening intently. The lullaby played on, but this time he felt a cold sweat on the back of his neck. Was it possible that this simple, worn-out box was more than just a keepsake? Was there a deeper connection to his past? One thing was clear: the music box was not just a random object, and he wasn't ready for what was about to unfold. As Richard turned the car keys, the music faded into the background, but the weight of what he had just heard stayed with him. The sound of that lullaby would haunt him long after the car had driven away. Something was stirring inside him, and he knew he couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. As Richard's curiosity deepened, he found himself holding the music box once more, studying it carefully. His eyes traced the edges, wondering if there was more to this object than he had initially thought. He carefully lifted the lid again, his fingers slow and deliberate. The song had stopped playing, leaving only the soft hum of the car's engine. But as he gazed inside, something unusual caught his eye. A small compartment hidden beneath the lining of the box. His breath caught in his throat as he carefully pried open the tiny secret door. Inside, tucked between the velvet lining, was a photograph. At first it looked like any old picture, faded with time and stained with age. But as Richard held it closer, his heart skipped a beat. The faces in the photo were unmistakable. The little girl on the picture had dark hair, a wide smile, and a sparkle in her eyes. She was young, full of life, and so familiar. And beside her stood a teenage boy, the same boy he had once been, standing next to his sister. It was him. His heart clenched as he realized what this meant. This was a photo of him and his sister, taken over 40 years ago. The shock hit him harder than he had expected. For a moment, Richard just stared at the photo, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. How was this possible? Why was this photo inside a music box that had been discarded by a poor girl at the side of the road? His mind raced with questions, but one thing was certain: this was no ordinary trinket. The music box had somehow held onto this picture for all these years, waiting to be found. The memories came rushing back like a flood. He remembered the day this picture had been taken, the two of them laughing as they stood in the sun on the old farm where they grew up. The photo had been taken on a day when everything felt perfect, a time before the world had grown cold and distant, before the family had fallen apart, and before his sister had passed away. The memory was bittersweet, a snapshot of innocence and love that had been lost to the passage of time. Richard's eyes filled with tears as he held the photograph, his fingers trembling. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring him back to this moment. He hadn't thought about his sister in so long, not since her death. He had buried those feelings deep, letting his empire and his relentless drive for success push everything else aside. But now, standing in the quiet of his car, that moment in time felt closer than ever. The more Richard stared at the picture, the more questions filled his mind. How had the poor girl come to possess this photo? Was it a coincidence, or was there something more to this discovery? He looked back at the music box, now just an innocent-looking object, yet it held the key to a past he had long buried. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random event. The photograph had somehow found its way into his hands, and now it was up to him to figure out why. As Richard tucked the photo back into the hidden compartment, he felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. This wasn't just a chance encounter, it was something much deeper, something that needed to be understood. And with that thought, he knew his life was about to change in ways he couldn't yet imagine. As Richard stared at the photo, the floodgates of memories burst open. The image of his sister, so full of life, triggered something deep within him. A surge of emotions that he had spent decades suppressing suddenly overtook him. His vision blurred as tears welled up in his eyes. He felt a heaviness in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years: grief, guilt, and regret all at once. The music box, which had seemed so insignificant just moments ago, now felt like a lifeline to the past he had buried. He remembered the day she had died, the car accident that tore his world apart. He had been just a young man, and she had been his little sister. Their parents had passed away when they were young, and the two of them had been sent to different foster homes. The bond they had shared in those early years was irreplaceable, but after the accident, Richard's focus shifted entirely. He had to grow up quickly, and over time he built his empire, leaving behind the pain of his childhood. But now, as he sat in the car, holding the music box that had once belonged to her, it all came rushing back. The music box had always been a part of her, something she carried with her, a small reminder of the love they had shared. He realized with a jolt that it was hers, the music, the photo. It all pointed back to the one person he had lost so many years ago. He hadn't known where her things had gone after the accident, after they were separated by the foster system. No one had ever told him, and he had never been able to find out. He wiped away a tear, trying to regain control, but it was impossible. The memories overwhelmed him. Her laugh, her voice, the way she would hum that lullaby when they were kids, the one that played from the music box. It was the song that had calmed them both after their parents died, the song that had soothed their pain in the darkest of times. And now, decades later, the very same tune was playing again, pulling him back to that place of raw vulnerability and loss. Richard's heart ached as he thought about how much time had passed. He had built an empire, amassed wealth beyond anyone's wildest dreams, but in all that time he had never truly dealt with the pain of losing his sister. He had buried it beneath layers of ambition, thinking that success would fill the void she left behind. But no amount of money or power could ever replace the love and connection they had shared as children. He looked at the music box once more, his hands trembling as he turned it over gently. The faded wood, the tarnished metal, and the small, delicate carvings, they were all remnants of the sister he had loved and lost. He felt a wave of guilt crash over him. Why hadn't he tried harder to find her things? Why hadn't he ever asked where her belongings had gone? The thought of her being forgotten, her memory tucked away in some unknown place, was unbearable. The tears flowed freely now as Richard realized the significance of the moment. The music box had been her treasure, something she had held on to, perhaps as a reminder of their bond. And now, in a twist of fate, it had come back to him, almost like a message from the past. The photo, the song, everything about it seemed too perfect, too meaningful to be a coincidence. The music box wasn't just an object. It was a bridge to his past, a way for him to reconnect with the sister he had lost so long ago. As Richard sat there, tears streaming down his face, he knew one thing for certain. This discovery had shattered him, but it also had the power to heal him in ways he couldn't yet understand. His life had been shaped by success and loss, but this moment reminded him of something he had forgotten. the importance of family, of love, and of never truly letting go. He held the music box close to his heart, knowing that somehow this was only the beginning of a journey he hadn't expected. After what felt like an eternity, Richard drove back into the small town, his heart heavy with the weight of the memories that had resurfaced. He couldn't shake the image of the music box, and he couldn't shake the girl. She had no idea who he was, and yet in that moment, it seemed like everything had led him to her. He had to know more. He had to find out how the box had come into her hands. Why was it in her possession, and how did it all tie together? The sun was starting to set as Richard pulled up to the same spot where he had first seen the girl. She was still there, sitting on the curb, her head down as if she were lost in thought. Richard's heart skipped a beat as he walked toward her, his mind racing with questions. He approached her slowly, careful not to startle her, and when she looked up, her tired eyes met his. "I have to ask you something," he said, his voice soft but firm. "That music box, can you tell me more about it?" The girl hesitated for a moment, her gaze shifting from Richard to the box in her hands. It was my mother's," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "She passed away recently, and that was the only thing I had left of her. She always kept it close, and I guess it just became mine." Richard felt a pang of emotion in his chest. He nodded slowly, trying to hold it together, but the pieces were starting to fall into place. He had to know more. "Where did she get it from?" Richard pressed gently. The girl seemed to shrink a little at the question, her eyes lowering as if she was searching for the right words. She didn't seem to understand why he was asking so many questions, but there was a familiarity in the way she spoke about the box, something that tugged at Richard's heart. "I'm not really sure," she replied, her voice soft. "She said it was a gift from someone she used to know, someone who was important to her. But she never really told me who it was." Richard's heart stopped as he felt a shocking realization hit him. He stared at her for a long moment, his mind racing, his breath catching in his throat. It couldn't be. Could it? Richard asked the question that had been haunting him for hours. "What was your mother's name?" The girl looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise, but she answered without hesitation. "Her name was Jessica. Jessica Hill." Richard's stomach dropped. He couldn't breathe for a moment, and his mind went into overdrive. Jessica Hill, his sister, his lost sister, his niece. He had to sit down. It all made sense now. This girl wasn't just some stranger. You're my niece," Richard whispered, barely believing his own words. The girl blinked, confused, as she tried to make sense of what he was saying. "What?" she asked, her voice trembling. Richard's heart ached as he sat next to her, trying to find the right words to explain everything. "Your mother was my sister. She passed away when we were kids. We got separated when we were put into different foster homes. I lost touch with her, but I've been looking for her things ever since." The girl stared at him in shock, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. Finally, the girl's lips parted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't understand. If you're my uncle, why didn't you try to find me? Why didn't you look for us after my mom, after she passed?" Richard's heart shattered at her question. He took a deep breath, his voice filled with regret. "I didn't know where to start. I was lost too. After my sister died, I focused on my career, got on everything that didn't matter. But now I know. I found you." Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at her. "I'm so sorry for everything. I should have been there for you." The girl's face softened as she looked at him, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. They had both lost so much, but in that moment, they had found each other. Richard looked at the girl, still in shock, and without thinking, he pulled her into an embrace. The girl stiffened at first, unsure of what was happening, but then her body relaxed as the reality of the situation set in. This man, who had been a complete stranger just moments before, was now holding her like she was his own blood. For the first time in her life, she felt the warmth of family, and that warmth cracked the dam of emotions she had been holding back for so long. Tears began to flow down her face as she broke into sobs. Her cries were heartbreaking, filled with a lifetime of loneliness and loss. Richard, still holding her, whispered softly, "It's okay. I'm here. I'm here now." He had never been good at comforting people, especially not a girl he barely knew, but something about this moment felt right. He could feel the weight of her pain, the absence of any family other than her mother, and it broke him. He wanted to take away all the years of hurt, all the years of feeling abandoned and forgotten. "I'm so sorry for everything," Richard murmured, his voice filled with regret and empathy. The girl clung to him, shaking, as if her world had just been flipped upside down. She had always been told stories of a distant uncle, but they were just stories, whispers in the wind that never seemed to matter. Now the man who had once been a stranger was telling her he was family. He was her last connection to the mother she had lost, the only family left. And despite all the confusion, she allowed herself to believe him. "You're really my uncle?" she asked, her voice broken between sobs. Richard nodded, feeling his own throat tighten as he tried to hold back his tears. "I am. I promise. I'm your family now. You're not alone anymore." For the first time in many years, Richard felt like he was right where he needed to be. He had spent so long focused on building his empire, always chasing more wealth and success, but here, in this moment, with this girl, he understood what truly mattered. Family, love, healing. He promised himself that he would make it up to her, to both of them, for all the lost time. After a few minutes, the girl slowly pulled away, wiping her eyes as she looked at Richard. "But I don't even know you. I don't know anything about you." She was still trying to make sense of everything, still trying to understand how this man, this billionaire, could be the family she had never known. Richard smiled softly, his eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. "I know, but we have time. We'll take it slow, and I'll tell you everything you need to know. I'll be there for you, I promise." Richard felt a renewed sense of purpose flood through him as he stood up and offered his hand to the girl. "Let's go, I'll take you somewhere safe, somewhere you can have a future." The girl hesitated for a moment, still unsure, but the look in Richard's eyes gave her the courage to take his hand. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. This man, her uncle, was offering her something she had never known. A chance at a different life, one filled with love and family. A chance to honor her mother's memory and to start a new chapter in her life. As they walked toward the car, Richard turned to her with a smile. "You don't have to do this alone anymore. I'll help you, and I'll make sure you never have to feel like you're alone again." The girl looked up at him, and though her face was streaked with tears, there was a softness in her expression that wasn't there before. She nodded, her heart swelling with a sense of belonging she had never felt before. She was no longer just a girl selling music boxes on the street. She was family, and Richard was determined to prove that to her every single day. Richard was determined to give his niece, whom he now called Emily, the kind of future she deserved. The next few days were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and arrangements. But for the first time in years, Richard felt like he was truly investing in something that mattered. He enrolled her in a private school, one that offered a top-tier education for children who had faced adversity, just like her. He wanted her to have every opportunity to thrive, to have a childhood she could be proud of, free from the pain and neglect that had shadowed her early life. But it wasn't just about the school. Richard understood that the scars Emily carried went deeper than what could be fixed with a new home or a good education. He arranged for her to meet with a counselor, someone who specialized in helping kids from broken homes, in hopes of giving her the emotional tools to heal. It wasn't easy. The road to recovery was slow, and some days were better than others. But Emily had a resilience in her that Richard couldn't ignore. With his support, she began to open up, talking about her mother, her struggles, and the pain of growing up without a family. One day, as Emily was getting ready for school, Richard sat her down in the living room. "Emily," he said, his voice full of warmth, "you don't have to hide your story anymore. Your journey, your courage is something people need to hear. You've been through so much, and I know you can help others." Emily looked at him, unsure at first. She had never thought her story could inspire anyone, but Richard's words planted a seed. I believe in you," he added gently, "and I'll be right beside you every step of the way." With Richard's encouragement, Emily began speaking at local events, sharing her experience of foster care, abandonment, and the unexpected reunion with her long-lost uncle. The more she spoke, the more people listened. Her voice became a beacon for other children who had been forgotten by the system, abandoned by their families, and left to fend for themselves. Emily's message was clear. No child should ever feel like they are alone, that they don't matter. The support from Richard and their shared story gave her a platform, and soon she was advocating for foster kids and abandoned families across the country. As Emily's public profile grew, so did her impact. She partnered with organizations dedicated to providing better care for children in foster homes, helping to raise awareness and funds for children in need. Her story, once a source of pain, had now become her greatest strength. She used it to fuel her passion for change, speaking with other children who had suffered similar fates and offering them hope. "You don't have to be your past," she would tell them. "You can write your own story." It was a message that resonated deeply with anyone who had ever felt forgotten or unimportant. Emily's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. She had gone from a lonely girl on the streets, selling music boxes, to an advocate for change. People were moved by her courage and strength, and her journey became a testament to the power of family, healing, and second chances. Richard couldn't have been prouder. He watched her grow from a broken soul into a young woman with a purpose, determined to change the world for others who had suffered like she had. He had given her the tools to rebuild her life, but Emily had done the rest herself, proving that no matter where you start, you can create a new beginning. Together, Richard and Emily worked to support abandoned families, foster children, and those who felt forgotten by society. Their mission grew beyond just advocacy. They created programs that provided education, mental health resources, and job opportunities for those in need. Emily's story was no longer just hers alone. It became a movement, one that was making waves in communities across the country. The girl who had once lived in poverty, who had been lost and alone, had found her voice and was using it to change the world for the better. Richard knew that the decision to buy that music box, that one moment of fate, had set them both on a path that would forever alter the course of their lives. Together, they were a family, healing, growing, and working toward a brighter future for everyone they touched. The audience was silent as Richard took the stage, the bright lights casting shadows on his face. Behind him was a screen that showed a picture of the simple music box, the one that had changed everything for him. The once immense billionaire, who had spent decades chasing wealth and success, stood there a different man. He had everything anyone could dream of: a sprawling mansion, luxury cars, and more money than he could ever spend. But as he looked out at the crowd, he felt something far more valuable than all of that. He had found something he had lost long ago: connection, family, and purpose. "I spent years chasing money," Richard began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I thought it would bring me happiness. I thought it would fill the emptiness that lingered from the moment I lost my sister." He paused, looking down at the music box that he still carried with him. It was no longer just a memento of a lost family member. It had become a symbol of everything that truly mattered. "But this music box reminded me what I truly lost along the way. The things that can't be bought: love, family, and the bonds that tie us together." His voice cracked slightly as he spoke, but he quickly regained his composure. Behind him, the audience watched intently. People in the crowd could relate to his words, some even tearing up as they thought about their own relationships and missed opportunities. Richard's eyes swept across the room. He wasn't just giving a speech, he was sharing a revelation, a truth he had only just come to understand. He had been so focused on accumulating wealth that he had forgotten the one thing that truly mattered: the people in his life. The love he had for his sister, and now the love he felt for Emily, his niece, were things that money couldn't touch. The screen flashed again, this time showing an image of Emily, standing proudly by his side at one of their charity events. Richard smiled as he looked at the photo, the pride in his heart palpable. "And it's not just about the past," he continued. "It's about the future. Emily has shown me the power of second chances and the strength of family. She's my reminder every day that the real wealth in life isn't in dollars or stock portfolios. It's in the people we love and the lives we touch. He could feel the weight of his words sinking in, not just for himself, but for everyone in the room. The crowd sat quietly, absorbing the gravity of what Richard had said. This wasn't the message they expected from a billionaire, the man who had once been so consumed by ambition. But it was the truth, and it resonated deeply. As Richard spoke, his eyes began to water, and he wiped them quickly, not wanting to show weakness. But in that moment, he realized that his vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was strength, and it was through his vulnerability that he could truly connect with the world around him. As the speech drew to a close, Richard's final words echoed in the hall. Sometimes the most priceless things come from the most unexpected hands. The screen behind him showed Emily again, standing with her arms around her uncle, the music box between them. It was a simple object, but it had changed their lives forever. The crowd erupted into applause, not just for the words Richard had spoken, but for the transformation they had witnessed in him. A man who had once been lost in the pursuit of wealth had found something far more valuable: love, family, and the power to make a difference. As the applause died down, Richard smiled and walked off the stage. He knew that his life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. And it all began with a cheap, dusty music box. The lesson was clear. The most valuable things in life often come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes it's the smallest gestures that leave the biggest impact. What do you think about Richard's journey? What has been the most important thing you've learned about life and family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to Millionaire Breakthrough for more stories of transformation, resilience, and the power of second chances. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring new story.